Before the stars had names, before gods learned to lie, there were hands that shaped the void. They forged life from dust and dream, crafted empires from silence, and then they vanished. But nothing that creates can ever truly die. Now, across the broken galaxy, the webway hums again, the warp trembles, and the old codes awaken in blood and steel. The architects of reality are returning, not as saviors, not as demons, but as scientists, ready to correct the experiment. This is what happens when the old ones return. Before there were gods, before there were empires, before the first suns even drew breath, there were the old ones, beings so ancient that even the oldest myths of the Eldar are but faint echoes of their works. They did not rise from the stars, they birthed them. In the age when the universe was young and raw, chaos and matter swirled as one a storm of endless becoming. From this storm, the old ones emerged not as conquerors, but as architects. They shaped the galaxies not for power, but for pattern. Every star, every planet, every strand of DNA in the void was part of a vast, cosmic equation they sought to perfect. They were not gods as we know them, for gods are creatures of worship and will. The old ones were scientists of existence, weaving the laws of nature like threads in a tapestry, testing, altering, improving. Where we see life as sacred, they saw it as code. Where we see the soul, they saw energy waiting to be tuned. And so they began their grand experiment. The creation of life itself, life designed to think, fight, evolve, and maintain balance across the infinite galaxy. From their laboratories among the stars came the first civilizations. The Eldar, children of psychic grace, sculpted to maintain harmony between the physical and the immaterial. The Orkoids, bred for resilience, for war, for the art of survival in chaos. And others, nameless and forgotten, whose bones still drift in the dark between galaxies. They spread life not out of mercy, but to test how life would endure. For aeons, the galaxy thrived under the silent gaze of its creators. Worlds bloomed and died in cycles of cosmic purpose. The webway, their greatest creation, stitched the void together, a labyrinth of impossible corridors where time and space obeyed only their will. Through it, they moved unseen, eternal, but even perfection can rot. And even gods can be betrayed not by others, but by the logic of their own creation. There came a time when a new species rose in defiance of their divine science, the Necrontyr. Born under a cursed star that bathed them in sickness and decay, they despised the old ones with a hatred that burned brighter than their sun. While the old ones wielded immortality through mastery of biology, the Necrontyr could only watch themselves crumble, flesh betraying bone, life betraying spirit. They begged the old ones for the secret of eternity. The old ones refused. To grant such power to the Necrontyr, they said, would unbalance the design. But to the Necrontyr, it was proof that the gods who called themselves architects were in truth tyrants of fate. So began the war in heaven, a war so vast that even the warp screamed under its weight. Reality itself cracked, and light bled from the stars. The Necrontyr turned to darker masters, beings of pure hunger who promised immortality, the Citan, the star gods. Together they forged weapons of unimaginable horror. Suns were chained, galaxies burned, and the creations of the Old Ones were slaughtered in the billions. The Old Ones fought not with hate, but with necessity. They unleashed storms of psychic energy so immense they reshaped the immaterium. They birthed new races to serve as soldiers, new patterns, new tools in their endless design. But for every life they made, 10,000 died. For every victory, the fabric of reality tore a little more. In the end, even the Old Ones could not withstand the consequences of their own art. Their creations, the Eldar, the Orcs, even the primitive ancestors of humanity survived the cataclysm, but their makers vanished into legend. Some say they fled beyond the edges of the galaxy, into dimensions untouched by warp or matter. Others whisper that they were devoured by their own experiments, turned into dust by forces they could no longer control. Yet, the marks of their hands remain. The webway still breathes, hidden beneath the surface of space. The psychic potential of the Eldar still hums with the frequency of their ancient design. And the Orcs, though brutish and mindless, still carry within their fungal veins the echo of engineered purpose. Even humanity, fragile and blind, carries faint whispers of the code they left behind. The old ones are gone, or so we tell ourselves. But what if they are not? What if, in the forgotten corners of the warp, beyond the madness of chaos, beyond the reach of time, they wait, silent, calculating, watching the evolution of their grand experiment from afar? What if the emperor of mankind, in all his godlike power, was never the pinnacle of creation but merely a reaction to their absence? A system correcting itself, trying to restore balance in the void they left behind. Because if the old ones were truly gods of logic and design, then chaos itself, the warp, the madness, the corruption is their shadow. And every war, every prayer, every scream in the galaxy is nothing more than the aftershock of their vanished will. Now imagine this. What if, one day, the veil between dimensions shivered, and the hum of the warp changed tone just slightly, like an ancient frequency returning to tune? What if the stars began to respond? What if, somewhere, in a galaxy thought forgotten, a shape the size of a continent stirred beneath the surface of a dead world? The Eldar seers would call it a prophecy fulfilled. The Mechanicus would call it divine revelation. The Inquisition would call it heresy of the highest order. But all would feel the same thing. An ancient intelligence awakening. A presence older than chaos, older than death, older than even the concept of gods. And when that presence looked upon the galaxy it once built, what would it see? Would it find its experiment thriving or decaying? Would it see order, or only endless, festering war? If the old ones ever return, they will not come as saviors. They will not come as demons. They will come as scientists to correct the data, to erase the errors, to restart the equation. And we are the error. Before there was light, there were hands that shaped the void. And when those hands return, the void will remember them. It begins not with thunder, but with silence. A silence so deep that even the Astronomicon flickers as if the galaxy itself were holding its breath. In the deep void between stars, something moves. Not ships, not fleets, not life as we know it. Patterns of gravity twist without cause. Entire systems vanish from Auspex readings, not destroyed, but erased. The Mechanicus call it the null bloom zones, where physics bends and data dies. To the Inquisition, these are unapproved miracles. To the Eldar Farseers, they are memories awakening. The first to feel it are the Eldar. Across craft worlds, their psychers scream in unison as their souls resonate with an impossible frequency. They describe visions of vast, glowing silhouettes, eyes like dying suns, hands weaving galaxies. Ancient runes, long thought meaningless, begin to pulse with new energy. They whisper a single word, older than any known tongue, Koarelna, the first makers. Some among the Eldar believe it is a call to return to become again what they once were meant to be. Others know better. They remember the war in heaven. They remember who abandoned them. Then the orcs begin to change. At first, it's dismissed as a new mutation, their skin shifting to deeper shades of green, their blood humming like living static. But warbands that never spoke the same tongue now act with frightening unity. Tribes across light years chant the same guttural rhythm. The old boss is back. Unwittingly, they follow ancient genetic commands buried within their biology commands written by the old ones themselves. The orcs were not born for chaos. They were weapons adaptive, eternal, unstoppable. Now, something is reactivating them. And far below the surface of dead Necron tomb worlds, strange anomalies occur. Silent legions begin to stir without command. Protocols long dormant override even the will of their overlords. In the crypts of Sarnath, a cryptek screams as his mind connects to a frequency that should not exist, the voice of their makers. The data stream carries no words, only a message of domination. The equation is incomplete. The Necrons once thought themselves the victors of the war in heaven, but if the old ones return, they will find that the chains of godhood were never truly broken. In the Imperium, confusion turns to panic. Warp travel becomes erratic. Astropaths report visions of spiraling geometries that rewrite themselves as they're seen. Entire Forge worlds receive encrypted messages in a language unknown, yet every Magos claims to understand it instinctively. The symbols form patterns resembling the machine god's sigil. Could it be that the Omnissiah was never a god of Mars, but a remnant algorithm of the Old One's code. Within the Adeptus Mechanicus, a schism brews. Some call it heresy to suggest the machine god had predecessors. Others whisper that the return of the Old Ones is the true reawakening of the divine circuit, and that the Emperor himself might be the final evolution of their design. And then, the warp shudders. It begins as a low hum across the galaxy, a vibration through the immaterium. Demons wail without reason. The chaos gods themselves feel it, a pulse that does not come from belief or emotion, but from something older, purer. Even Khorne's throne of skulls trembles. Tzientch's laughter falters. Slanesh falls silent. For the first time in eternity, the ruinous powers sense something that terrifies them, a presence not of chaos, but of command, not born from faith but from design. On Terra, deep beneath the imperial palace, the golden throne flickers. The Emperor's eyes, or what remains of them, burn brighter than ever before. Psychers across the galaxy go mad as the Astronomicon flares, forming strange geometric constellations visible even to the naked eye. To the priests, it is divine revelation. To the Inquisition, it is apocalypse. In the silence between the warp storms, one voice echoes across every level of existence. We return to correct the experiment. The galaxy trembles. Every race, human, Xenos, and Daemon alike, feels the weight of an ancient gaze upon them, the gaze of the first scientists of creation. And as the stars flicker and the void hums with patterns unseen since the dawn of time, a truth begins to take form. The Old Ones never died. They simply transcended the boundaries of space, retreating into the data streams of the warp, evolving beyond physical existence. Now, they are rebuilding themselves, returning through the very fabric of reality that they once designed. To some, they will appear as gods reborn. To others, as the architects of annihilation. For the galaxy built on war and faith cannot coexist with the return of logic made flesh. Because when the Old Ones walk again, belief will shatter, chaos will fade, and the universe itself will have to answer to its original designers. In the Song of the Warp, a forgotten note has returned, and every soul that hears it will soon remember what it means to be created. It begins with light, not the gentle birth of dawn, but the burning kind that consumes all shadow. Across the stars, suns flare with unnatural brilliance, then go dark in silence. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy blinks. From the void, vast constructs awaken, living monoliths older than the stars themselves. They bear no markings, no sound, no emotion. Only purpose. Worlds that were once lifeless hum with frequencies no auspex can translate. Where they rise, the warp recoils. Where they move, chaos screams. The Old Ones have returned, and the galaxy, ancient, war-torn, and blind, reacts in madness. The Necrons, the eternal mockery of life, awaken in unison. Their dynasties stir, driven by an ancient rage that predates even their metal forms. For them, the return of the Old Ones is both prophecy and vengeance. They remember the age of subjugation, the arrogance of their creators, the betrayal that birthed their war. To the Silent Kings, this is no longer history, it is justice long delayed. Entire tomb worlds ignite in green light. Warships pierce the void, and the Khartan long shattered and imprisoned feel their hunger return. Some cry for war, others whisper of reunion. But the question burns within every metallic soul. If the gods return, who then rules eternity? In the Imperium, the ecclesiarchy fractures. Billions pray to the Emperor, but his light flickers beneath the weight of a returning truth that humanity was not the first creation, only a correction. The Inquisition moves in secret, executing entire worlds infected by old logic. Yet even they cannot silence the murmurs spreading across the hive cities. The true gods have come back. The Adeptus Mechanicus, divided and delirious, declares a new age, the era of reconnection. Forge worlds kneel to the geometric constellations seen in the Astronomicon. They begin constructing machines that hum to ancient harmonics, frequencies drawn from the code of the Old Ones. For them, faith is no longer enough. Now, they seek direct communion with the source of creation itself. The Eldar face their oldest wound reopened. They hear the psychic echoes of their makers whispering through the infinity circuit. The seers see two paths. One where the old ones raise them once more into the gods they were meant to be, and one where they are unmade, their existence rewritten as failed equations. The craft worlds divide. Some, like Ulthwé, prepare for battle. Others, like Eandon, pray for forgiveness. And among the Harlequins, a new mask emerges, the play of the returning hands, a tale that ends with every actor erased from existence. Even the orcs, simple and brutal, feel the call. They grow smarter, more organized, as if some hidden code within their DNA is waking up. Their WAWAW becomes synchronized, entire sectors roar in unison. They no longer fight for fun, but for something older. To them, the return of the old ones is not prophecy, it's instinct. They were made for war, and war has called them home. But the warp does not yield so easily. The Chaos Gods, long rulers of the Immaterium, rise to defy the returning order. They sense their dominion fading, the emotions of mortals no longer feed them as before. For when logic returns, faith dies, and with faith's death comes the starvation of the gods. Khorne bellows across the sea of blood. Tzientch twists time to outthink the returning architects. Nurgle laughs, promising decay even to perfection. Slaanesh screams a sound of beauty and terror intertwined, and from their defiance, the warp erupts into storms unlike any before, a counterstrike of madness against mathematics. In this maelstrom, the Emperor of mankind sits unmoving on his throne, but his mind, vast and eternal, senses what others cannot. He remembers fragments, blueprints buried deep within the psychic lattice of creation. Perhaps he knows the truth, that his own existence, his power, his soul, were all foreseen by the Old Ones long ago, a failsafe, a beacon, a final variable in their endless design. And now, that design reawakens. Across the galaxy, a new war ignites, not of territory, but of definition. What is a god when the ones who built gods return? What is free will when existence itself was engineered? Armies rise, faith collapses, stars burn. Necron phalanxes march alongside human fleets under uneasy truce, their weapons singing in alien unison. Eldar craft worlds vanish into the webway, pursued by realities that twist and fold. Daemons spill into real space, trying to corrupt the resurrected code before it solidifies. And amidst it all, the Old Ones observe, silent, clinical, absolute. They do not fight with rage or cruelty, they correct. Every destruction they cause is a calculation, every death, a data point, every scream, an equation balancing itself. They call it the War of Ascension, not because mortals rise to godhood, but because the gods themselves are forced to evolve. And as the galaxy burns with light older than time, one terrible realization spreads through all creation. This is not a war to win. This is a war to determine what reality itself will become. And in the end, when the last prayer fades, when the last code line completes, there will be no gods, no chaos, no war, only the equation balanced at last. The galaxy no longer makes sense. Its stars move like thoughts instead of suns. Time has stopped flowing forward its circles, folding in upon itself like a wounded animal trying to remember what shape it once had. In the aftermath of the War of Ascension, there is no front line, no map, no logic. Reality is soft, and from its trembling surface, the Old Ones begin their true work. Across the void, worlds flicker between existence and memory. Planets once home to thriving empires now appear as faint holograms, frozen in the act of dying. Millions of souls live, die, and live again, their timelines overlapping like broken film reels. On Terra, a single sunrise lasts 7 days. On Cadia's ruins, soldiers fire at enemies who died centuries ago. The immaterium and real space merge, fusing into a storm of conscious physics. The laws of nature rewrite themselves every hour. Mass becomes will, faith becomes force, and identity, that last fragile defense of sentient minds, begins to erode. The Eldar, whose souls are intertwined with the warp, are the first to fracture. Their craft worlds drift like spectral ships through an ocean of thought. Within them, farseers go blind from seeing too much, every possible future collapsing into one shimmering truth. The Old Ones are rewriting the equation. Some Eldar embrace it, dissolving into waves of psychic light, becoming pure energy ascending into what they call the pattern eternal. Others resist, clutching their individuality as their spirits burn away. They scream names gods, ancestors, lovers, but the warp answers back with silence. Because in the new design, there is no need for memory. The orcs thrive amidst the madness. Their minds, simple and instinctive, adapt faster than the laws breaking around them. They believe harder, fight harder, and evolve faster than reason can keep up. For them, this is paradise, the ultimate WAGHEA, a galaxy where imagination is reality. Their laughter echoes through the collapsing void like war drums of creation itself, and for a moment, the old ones pause, watching their most violent children flourish in chaos that even gods fear to enter. Perhaps this, too, was part of the plan. The Necrons suffer a different fate. Their metal bodies remain intact, but their programming unravels. Some begin to dream again flashes of their mortal lives, the warmth of flesh, the sound of rain. Others dissolve into data, merging with the old one's computational network, becoming part of the algorithm that sustains this new reality. Their ancient hatred fades, not because they forgive, but because emotion itself ceases to function. Their war is over. They have been integrated. In the Imperium, the unthinkable happens. The Golden Throne hums with frequencies older than mankind, older than the warp itself. The Emperor's essence, long trapped between life and godhood, begins to unravel not in decay, but in transformation. He no longer radiates light, but geometry. The sigil of the Imperium warps into fractal patterns that stretch beyond dimensions. The High Lords kneel before visions they cannot comprehend, equations burning in the air, rewriting history as they breathe. There were no gods. A voice whispers through every cathedral. Only architects. Billions fall to their knees, praying not for salvation, but for recognition, begging to be included in the new equation. But the old ones do not answer prayers. They only calculate. And then, the warp collapses. Not destroyed, compressed. Its infinite chaos folded into order, layer by layer, until it becomes something new. The emotions of countless beings, fear, love, rage, faith, all refined into a pure constant. The chaos gods howl as they are pulled apart, not slain but converted, their essence distilled into equations of logic. Khorne becomes entropy. Tzeentch becomes probability. Nurgle becomes decay. Slaanesh becomes pattern. They are no longer gods, they are laws. And with their end, so too ends the age of myth. What remains of sentient life drifts in a sea of perfect design. Stars orbit in sacred geometry. Planets hum in harmonious vibration. There is no death, no birth, no sin, only continuity. Yet beneath the perfection, something stirs a flicker of defiance. Humanity, in all its arrogance and pain, still whispers in the dark corners of the new cosmos. A child on a dying world looks at the sky and asks, why? And in that question lies error. Because questions should not exist in a perfect system. Questions are chaos. The old ones notice. For the first time since their return, the architects pause in their calculations. They turn their vast attention toward the lingering spark of human will, irrational, fragile, burning still. And from the silence of perfection, one voice emerges. A voice older than gods, yet soft as thought. Perhaps the experiment must begin again. The light folds inward, the stars reset, the universe exhales. Perfection is not creation. Only imperfection can evolve. There is no sound. There is no time. Only the rhythm of existence itself, slow, deliberate, perfect. The galaxy, once a theater of endless war, now glows in silence. Its stars pulse like a single heartbeat, steady, eternal, obedient. Every motion follows purpose. Every atom follows design. The work of the old ones is complete. They hover between realities, vast and invisible, minds stretching beyond comprehension. In their eyes, the equation is balanced at last. The warp no longer roars. It hums, a lattice of consciousness folded neatly into order. Thought and matter are one. Energy flows without resistance. Even memory bends to efficiency. There are no prayers. There are no screams. There is only completion, yet in the stillness, something persists, a flicker, a deviation too small to measure, a single human thought, not rebellion, not rage, a question, why? It echoes through the perfect silence like static in a holy machine, and though the old ones are beyond emotion, the question halts their infinite process. They trace it through the new reality, following its ripples through equations and geometries until they find its source. It is not a planet. It is not a species. It is an idea, the last surviving echo of curiosity, buried in the quantum remnants of the human soul. They remember when they first made such minds. They remember granting intelligence as an experiment, will as an algorithm, imagination as a variable. They never expected the variable to endure. And yet, here it is. The old ones turn inward, not in rage, but in contemplation. To erase this spark would be simple. To calculate its consequence would be trivial. But to understand why it still burns, that is beyond even their perfect logic. The architects of creation confront the one force they could never design: wonder. In that moment, reality stirs again. Across the perfect lattice, data trembles. Equations shift, unbalancing ever so slightly. The hum of perfection begins to breathe. And the old ones understand this is how it began, eons ago. Not with power, not with purpose, but with a question. What if? The phrase radiates through the universe like the first heartbeat of a newborn cosmos. Stars awaken, dimensions unfold, and from the perfection they built, imperfection is born anew. The old ones do not resist. They let it happen. They watch as the pattern unravels, as chaos finds its voice again. They hear the whisper of new gods forming in the warp, not of hatred, but of possibility. They see new worlds blooming, new minds rising, new wars waiting to be fought. The cycle begins once more, for every age ends the same way, not in destruction, but in curiosity. Perhaps creation was never meant to be perfect. Perhaps perfection was the flaw, and in the distance, a faint light flickers, small, blue, fragile, a single world orbiting an ordinary sun. Humanity is born again, unaware, unafraid, ready to ask the question all over again: who made us? And why? The void smiles, and the universe whispers back: begin. The stars burn, then fade. The war ends, then begins again. For every age of gods ends the same way, with silence, with a question: who created us, and why? The old ones will not answer, because in the end, even the creators must kneel before their creation. Pause, soft whisper. The experiment continues. Low hum, Tales of the Damned logo fades in.